I think I'm live. Let's see here. Yeah, okay. Greetings, everyone. After our break for the holidays, hope all are well, considering what's going on in the world. So, before we go on any further, I want to dedicate tonight's share uh, in the merit of all of our fallen brothers and sisters in Israel and all our soldiers and those who are protecting us. And Hashem should watch over us, and He should avenge our blood immediately and put an end to this horrific war. And we should have Moshiach right now. I also want to dedicate to my father, who's not feeling well. He's in the hospital. Joseph ben Sarah Rivka should have refuah shleima. And l'chaim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol nivra. So before we get into this, just to just say a couple words about what's going on. When we first heard the news, I just got back from World Lubavitch headquarters, 770. And we were doing hakafas, and we found out the news. I don't recall if it was simplest. I think it was Swing Atzeres. And it spread like wildfire throughout the community. They're members of our community for Hatzalah, for other purposes that have radios, and everyone found out. Yeah, it caused, as you could imagine, to almost everyone who was there. Thank you. A complete shock. You don't know what to do. You don't want to. Should you cry? Should you mourn? Should you stop? But one thing that we know for sure from the teachings of our Rebbe and from the history of Hasidim is that simcha pair together. That if we're sad right now, then our enemies win. They want to put us down and make us feel sad and miserable, and that they're stronger than they have the power, and it's not true. It may seem that way at this current moment in time, but it is certainly not true, and God will surely avenge our blood. And as always, we will wind up victorious. Every single nation throughout our history of 129 nations that have thrown us out or tried to annihilate us or all the other things they like to do to us, they're all gone, and we're still here thriving. And we know that the Geula Shlema is moments and moments away. So we just have to do everything we can. As the Tzemach Tzedek said, the third Rebbe of Chabad, we're day workers, meaning aggravating ourselves, being depressed, sad, despondent. That doesn't add anything that it could be positive from the situation. What do? We add light. We find another Jew to put tefillin on. We give more tzedakah. We daven more intensely. We learn more. We do anything we can to bring more goodness and light into this world, because certainly God and goodness and light will defeat darkness. And so, without saying more, let's start learning, because what better time to learn Torah than now, than what we're going through right now at these current times. And it's interesting, just as a side note, that there's no words to explain what's going on right now. There's nothing to compare to. The only other, thing is the Holocaust is Shemish more, but as far as Eretz Israel goes, at least the land of Israel, as we should call the state of Israel as it's been established, the last time there was such a horrific atrocity was the Yom Kippur War. That was against soldiers, not against innocent civilians. For those of you who don't know, I don't want to be graphic, but the extent of what these animals, they literally went door to door and broke doors down and raped women in front of their kids, murdered husbands. Pogroms like you can't imagine. How anyone in this world could possibly be supporting such a thing and speaking out against Israel just shows that they belong 10 feet under, burning in hell with the rest of these people. There's nothing to even talk about. Israel has never ever been an aggressor in any war. Every single time they're defending themselves and their right to live. And I don't want to get into it, just I'm going to get extremely angry. But interesting enough, it was almost 50 years to the day of the Yom Kippur War. The Yom Kippur War was in 1973 on October 6th. And this took place on October 7th, maybe the 6th. Literally 50 years to the day. And we know that everything for Kedusha has a corresponding opposite in Klipa. Everything for good has correspondence in darkness. And in fact, there's an opinion in the Gemara that says that Mashiach will come in a Yovel year. He will come after the 50-year cycle of the Yovel year. We don't have Yovel counting because of the times of the base of Migdash. We don't have an active temple right now. But I would be willing to venture to say that it is 50 years since this last horrible event. So perhaps there's a place to suggest that 50 years ago there was a grand event of the Yovel year, and that with God's help, this will be the year that Melech Mashiach finally reveals himself. It should happen immediately. Okay, we are now in Parshas Bereshis. We are starting over the cycle of the Devar Malchus Sichos from Bereshis. These are the sequence that went through 2 years, Nun Aleph to Nun Beis. This is Nun Beis, the end of the sequence, because it started in Nun Aleph, which was 1991 to 1992. And these Sichos known as Devar Malchus started in Parshas Vayikra, which is right after Pesach. Anyhow, so we're starting over Bereshis with the beginning of the book, and we're starting over a new chapter. We're starting over a new Chumash, and it should be with renewed energy. And God should give every one of us the koach to fulfill our mission in this world in a way of menucha, simcha, v'tu, love. And He should avenge our blood immediately and wipe the world out from this hatred, both the hatred in our hearts and the hatred in the outside. Okay, Aleph. V'yadua paskam Rabbeinu Nasiyenu. Shabbos Bereshis Naga'as L'Kol Hashanah Kula. As it's known, has been repeated many times by our rebbes and our leaders. That Shabbos Bereshis is connected to the entire year. That's the Shabbos Bereshis, where we read Parshas Bereshis. Azoy Voy Mistalot Zich. This is in Yiddish. I'll read the Hebrew in a second. Avach Shabbos Bereshis. Azay Gait A Ganatz Yair. The way you conduct yourself, the way you enter, and the way you hold yourself and conduct yourself throughout this entire Shabbos draws down and has an impact on the entire year. So it's a very powerful Shabbos. Shabbos Bereshis. So the Rebbe asks, and what is it that is expressed specifically in Shabbos Bereshis that has drawn down this energy through the entire year? Seemingly, this should be the entire concept of the entire month of Tishrei. Tishrei Osiris Reshis. Tishrei is the same Jewish letters of Reshis, which means beginning. Hu HaReshis shall call Hashanah Kula, because it's the month that is the head of the entire year. Tishrei. Kidua Shalomdim Shal Chodesh Tishrei. Chinam Moedim Klalim Shemehem Nim Sharakal Kashana. And also, furthermore, it's known that all the holidays of the month of Tishrei, which we're just coming out of right now, this includes this particular energy from the head of the year that will draw down for the whole entire year to come. Rosh Hashanah, it starts with Rosh Hashanah, Shenikra B'Shem Rosh Hashanah, head of the year. Rosh Klalo B'Toichai Minhag Es Kol Yemei Hashanah, because the head is the beginning, and from the head down, the body follows. Everything begins with the head. That's where the source of the soul and the energy of the body derives from. And then also we see this connected Yom Kippur. And then after that, of course, we go into the Hag of Sukkot. Zman Simchasenu, the time of our rejoicing. Shmini Atzeres for Simchas Torah, up until the point of Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah. Medua im Kain Mitzianim Yumachad. As her Shabbos Bereshis, Vakach Shenaga, the fall as Kol Hashanah. And it's known that this is a sign, a unique sign. So what is so special that makes it such a unique sign about Shabbos Bereshis that it's connected to the entire year to come? In other words, why is it Shabbos Bereshis and not Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Simchas Torah, Sukkot, all these holidays where all this energy is coming from? But yet the emphasis is on how we conduct ourselves in this particular Shabbos. Shabbos Bereshis Mitzinu Es Ma'avar Chodesh Tishrei. And one point to understand this in a simple way is that Shabbos Bereshis, we find ourselves in the end of the month, the passing of the month of Tishrei, Muruva, and the holidays are already past us. The Seder Regel Shachaya Yoy B'Sha'ar Chad Hashana. Now it's time to go back into the regular year. I just, as I mentioned, came from 770 Lubavitch World Headquarters. Anyone who is there over the Hagim will tell you that there's no simcha like that outside of the Beis Hamikdash. I take that back. Lag BaOmer and Meron, different type of energy, different type of simcha, but the idea is there's literally thousands and thousands of Jews from all over the world that come to 770 World Headquarters of Chabad. And Beit Rabbeinu Sheba Babel, the home of the leader of our generation, which serves as the Beis Hamikdash while the Beis Hamikdash is still not visible to us. And they're from all over the world, and there's dancing every night till 6 o'clock in the morning. 6 o'clock in the morning, every single night, from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. And then Hakafas in 770 for Shmini Atzeres for Simchas Torah. The energy is so powerful, you feel it. You walk in the room, and it's everyone in there. It's like you're plugged into the source of energy and chayas for the entire world. It's just channeling down. I literally felt like the whole entire building was going to lift off the ground, and that it was a giant keter, and everything was just going up higher. Like it was, you really could feel the energy. You could taste it. It's unbelievable. And I'm sure everyone across the world, in their own way, in their own sukkahs and their own Simchas Torah, had a taste of this beautiful simcha of this time. And now, guess what? We got to take all that energy, all that power, all that Ahavas Yisrael, that love, that feeling. Like God willing, for bringing the center this week. I could talk to you for hours about the experience of how many people in 770 were coming up to me and blessing me and kissing my beard and hugging me, and I was blessing people and kissing them and hugging them that you don't know. You understand? It's like strangers, just guys, like just pure brotherly love, of dancing together, of warmth, of joy, of just no other thoughts. There's nothing in your head. It says during Simchas Beis Shweva that everyone gets Ruach HaKodesh. What does it mean? It means the reason we're so fakakt is we live in our brains. We're all the time calculating. We're hyper vigilant. We're trying to protect something because of a trigger of the past, or we're living in fear of what may happen tomorrow or next week, or what about this? Our brains, our heads are just totally controlling everything, and we're not free. We're not flowing. And now all of a sudden, and the Frierdiker Rebbe said that everyone who dances, he said, especially business people who have to work and make their parnassah from working for a living, which is pretty much most of us, right? There are not too many people out there all day who just sit and learn Torah all day long. But the Frierdiker Rebbe says that during the Hakafas of Simchas Torah, we're supposed to have Rahmanas. We're supposed to have mercy on our bodies for the fact that we have to go to work every day. We have to work to provide parnassah for our families, because that's what God ruled. God decided from the beginning of time, man has to work. That's part of what it means to be a man. You need to work. I'm not saying women can't work or don't have to work, but that mitzvah is specifically given to us. Meaning, it's hard. And so the Frierdiker Rebbe says, when you're dancing with the Torah and Simchas Torah, the joy that you experience, your heart being one with God and with all your brothers and sisters around the world, the feeling of love is so overpowering that you have to have Rahmanis and say, wow, because that's real. This is not reality what we're going into. This is Gaulish reality, where we have to work to find God every single day. But when you're plugged into such an energy of the Chagim, and you feel it, and it's real and it's palatable, and now, guess what? Now we've got to re-enter the world. Now we've got to re-enter the world and unpack all of this, right? The Frierdiker Rebbe said that for 48 hours, from Shmini Atzeres to the end of Simchas Torah, buckets of brachas are coming down. And your vessel to receive them is through dancing, the simcha. Dancing, simcha. That's the avoda of this time. That's what we're supposed to do. Anyways, the point is, now, whatever brachas we brought in, all this energy, we have to portion and find a way to bring it into the world. The worst thing we could do right now is go back into the world and just be like, all right, well, back to the grind. No, that was nice while it lasted, and just become the exact same person that we were, and then do this a year from now. No. What we need to do is take this energy, this power, and we have to integrate it into our lives. We have to find a way to bring it into our davening, into our homes, into with our wives, and our kids, and our families, and our friends, and our relationships, in our tzedakah, in our Torah learning, every aspect of our life. We have extra energy because if you don't put it in good places, guess what happens? The klipa latches onto you, drills into your head and your heart, picks up on the negative energies that it's planted there, your fears, your worries, your nervousness, your neuroses, wherever they are, and it just sucks it like this, like a leech. It just sucks out your energy. And next thing you know, a week goes by, and you forgot about that one. You forgot about all that good, and you're just back to the grind. No, what we need to do, we have to find a way to integrate this energy to every aspect of our life, to bring God more deeper into our lives, more outwards, right? Quantity and quality. It's been all the time. Increase in number, increase in quality. Just continue to increase and increase. Take that energy into the world. Anyways, so now here we are, and we've got to go back into the world. Yep. Shabbos Bereshis he Aleph. So now he's going to say about two aspects of Shabbos Bereshis. One, Hasil Nesach Kol Shana Shal Chodesh Tishrei. It's the completion of the month of Tishrei. But you also have Shabbos Acharon Shal Chodesh, and the final Shabbos of the month. Shaz Yah Ha'iliyah B'Shleimus Yuchulu Shal Sion Ha'ondim the Chodesh Tishrei. It's the completion. It's the seal of the month of Tishrei. Okay. Shmini Atzeres v'Simchas Torah, which is the Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah. Shehem otzrim v'koltim Atzeres v'lashon klita v'iknasim v'penimius as kol hayimim tayim shel chodesh Tishrei. Okay, so now the Rebbe said, after all this joy and this excitement we just talked about, we have to absorb it. We have to bring it penimius. Kol hayamim tayim shel chodesh Tishrei. All these holy days, holidays in the month of Tishrei, we have to bring them into our lives. Base. Tchila shel havoda haregila shel hashana haba. B'yisrael Shabbos morvachim b'chodesh mar cheshbon. Chodesh cholin. Rishon shel hashana chadasha. Kasher mitchila kiyodoi ikar avoda shel Yaakov halech l'darchei. L'darchei dafka. Be'eninei ha'olam va'odim d'chol. Ish tachas gafnoi. V'tachas ta'anos. Now the Rebbe says, and now we have to begin our service. So on one hand, it represents the sealing of the month of Tishrei and all the festivities and all the Jewish holidays and all that tremendous energy we drew down. And now, on the second hand, it also represents the fact that now we have to unpack it. We have to bring this into the ordinary weekday and week year and make it, now we have to start our service. And this is a service of Yaakov Holech L'Darchei. Yaakov went on his way. What is Yaakov? It's Yisrael. We are the Jewish people. We have to go on our way. How much more does this apply after what we're experiencing right now? How much more do we need to bring godly energy into our lives? And this is the matter of, it says, and one sits under a vine, one sits under a fig. No matter what it is that your lot in your life is, you're coming out of these holidays, and we got to bring it into the world. It doesn't matter. Say, well, I work at Amazon in a factory. What can I do? You have no idea. Talk to the person next to you. Like talk to them about Hashem. Talk to, if they're not Jewish, the 7 laws of Noah. If they're Jewish, ask them to spend a Shabbat. Ask them to put on tefillin. There's a million things we could do. We just have to start spreading out that light outside and inside, right? We got to bring that godly energy into our lives. You know what that means? We got to go out of our comfort zone. If it means you've got to travel an extra 6 minutes to get kosher food instead of non-kosher food, and you have to spend another $1 on your sandwich, so be it. That's what you need to do, because that's what God said to do. That's how we bring God into our lives. It's hard. It's hard getting out of our comfort zone. But when things like this happen, they shake us. We have to always, there's multiple levels of reality happening at all times. I don't want to get too far, of course. It's more for bringing. But of course, God needs to redeem his children right now, and we have to scream out to God for redemption. But we also have to look inside, and we have to look inside and say, what am I taking out of this? To sit at home and just watch the news all day and say this is terrible, this is terrible, this is terrible 100 times and do nothing. That's not helping. We have to take things upon ourselves. We have to find ways to increase in our service of God and in the Torah and the mitzvot and prayer, the three pillars that God gave us that the world stands on. Okay. ומכיוון ששבת בראשית כולה לא יספתח של שני העניינים, היא שבת ראש של חודש תשרי, והיא מרכבת as חודש חולין, and now we see that it's a special Shabbos on one hand because it is the end of the completion, of all of the big blessings and holidays, and at the other hand, it's the beginning of the upcoming ordinary work month of Cheshvan. Chodesh Tishrei Atzma. Wait, hold on, sorry. Lefichach noten es koach miuchad lahanage shel kol hashana. And therefore, the Rebbe said it has a very special energy, a very special power that it gives us in order to draw down for the entire year, because it's like the bookends, if you will, right? It's connecting the past year with the future year. All that energy, especially in the last month, with the upcoming year to come. And so there's a very special energy imbued and baked into this Shabbos Bereshis. Chodesh Tishrei Atzma mikevan shehu b'dargas Reshis harchil muvdal murumam asher chadshe hashana u'memoila b'mitzvahs kedusha hamidrash. And this month of Tishrei itself, since this is a level of Reshis, right, beginning, and this is separating it from the other months, this month in particular. Well, and Tishrei and Reshis, as we already pointed out, is the same root letters. The mitzvah of kedusha, the mila ain b'tochin kol kach shulchol lahamshich as hamitzvah hamurumam. And therefore we see that we automatically it's 1 second. So we're not sure so much, the Rebbe says, how we're supposed to draw down this energy and this power from the month of Tishrei into the rest of the year. Okay, the Rebbe said there may be an uncertainty on how we go about doing that. But Shabbos Bereshis, but this is not the case on Shabbos Bereshis. Because in and of itself, it has that power. Because the Shabbos is actually ending and giving a stamp, a sign for the end of the month of Reshis, the beginning month, the month of Tishrei. And then it's also giving that power to we know that every Shabbos in general, what happens is, just to give you a little tinker behind the veil, peel back a little bit layer of reality. Look at it this way. You've got a spiritual gas tank, right? It says every Shabbos you get an extra soul. What does it mean we get an extra soul? It means another soul comes down from Shemayim and comes together with us to experience Shabbos. What is that extra soul? That extra soul is connected to your avodat Hashem of the previous week. Not how hard you worked in your job, not how much money you made, not anything connected to this physical world, but rather your Torah, your Tefillah, and your Gemul Chasidim, the three pillars that the world stands on. And Allah has kama v'kama, mysterious nefesh, going out of your way to help another Jew, which trumps everything, because that's what the Rebbe tells us the main service is right now. So the more of that you do throughout the week, the stronger or the bigger capacity, if you will, your soul has to make room for added soul, added life, right? The world says be the biggest you can be. Judaism says shrink yourself. This is the beauty of going to 770 during this time. Think it's not avoda? You think it's not hard? You're dancing, or you're in a building that probably meant to hold a fraction of the amount of people that are there. You're being shoved and pushed, and it's hot, and you're sweating, and you're fetched, and people are bumping into you and coughing and smashing. And the less of yourself that you feel, the less it bothers you. The more of yourself you feel, oh, I'm getting shoved. It smells. It's gross. That's your own feeling. Sometimes a lot of people can't handle it. They don't even want to go over there because it's too intense. Because you feel yourself. This is called Yeshus. This is not our fault. This is something that's baked in. It's called our ego. The whole point of Hasidus, the whole point of Judaism is to dissolve that ego. To dissolve that ego to make room for God. Because the more space you occupy, the less space there is for God. And we occupy space, by the way. People think that only an ego is only for people who walk around all macho, like, check out my car, my watch, and how much money I'm making, and how buff I am. They're like, that's one form of ego. That's called an ego that goes out. There's another form of ego that is, woe is me. Oh, my life is so hard. And my wife, and my kids, and my brother, and my sister, and my boss, and my neighbor, and oh, my back, and my knee, and my ear, and we're just so miserable in our being that we're living in the same ego space. It's just instead of going outwards, it goes inwards. The people whose ego are inwards look at those outward and be like, oh, he's such an egomaniac. And they don't realize that their ego is 10 times bigger. The point of the matter is, either way, it takes up space. Whether you're expanding it out or pulling it back in, you're taking up space. When you take up space, there's no room for God. So the less space we take up every week, the more our soul shines, the more our body crashes in, and the bigger new soul we get that impregnates us on Shabbat. And then we go into the upcoming week, and we get to start the process over again. And that energy keeps coming and coming and coming. It's the same idea that we have on Shabbos Bereshis, is what the Rebbe is telling us now. We're taking all that energy, not just from the last week, but from the last year, from the month of Tishrei, of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot and Simchas Torah. And we're now preparing to bring that energy into the world. So the day itself is a very, very, very powerful day, which is the Rebbe is explaining to us now, because, of the ability to contain that energy. What's holding? O karemas gam et tevas bereshis. When lashon hatchel berosh. And also we see that Shabbos Bereshis is from the lashon of Rosh, and this is the beginning and head of the entire year. Nosef lezeh shapashas Bereshis he. Not only that, it's the beginning of the Torah, right? Bereshis is the first pasuk in the Torah. Tchila shel kriyas kol Torah, the beginning of reading the entire Torah. She'oisam kurim v'imimim tzrich lihiyos. Meshech kol hashanah. And it's the beginning of reading the entire Torah again. And therefore, we see it gives us life, power for the upcoming year. And we see it's a mechutza mechuba. In other words, it's a go-between and uniter between the previous month and, in fact, the previous year, and the upcoming month and the upcoming year. And therefore it has a unique power. All mamutas, all things that combine other things, have to have a special power that they have both of them embodied inside. And that's therefore this Shabbos gives us a special power to bring down all this power and energy and infuse it into the upcoming world and the upcoming year. כפי שמובן גם בתוכנה של פרשת בראשית. And according to this, we could also understand also the intention of Parshas Bereshis, Shabbat Medubar Oides Maaseh Bereshis. And as like it's known that this is the beginning of the creation, Oide Kriyasa Torah B'Pasek Bereshis. Bereshis Bar Elokim as Hashemayim as Haaretz. God created the heavens, He created the earth. The Chadasha as Habriya shall call in Olam the Shana Chadasha. And this is blessing the creation. And all the matters of the world from year to year. And therefore, just to recount, there is a very special power in this Shabbos that is going to affect and bring all this power that we have out into the world. We can understand this matter even more. And according to what our rabbis teach us in the precise language of Bereshis. What does it say, Bereshis? It says, Bereshis HaTorah Shnikaras Reshis. Darche B'Yishvel Yisrael Shnikar Reshis Terois. That Reshis is standing for the beginning. And it's standing for two beginnings. For the two beginnings, the two purposes God created the world. One is for the Torah, and the other is for the Jewish people. That we are the beginning, the first in God's thoughts to bring about the whole purpose of creation, as well as the Torah, which is the blueprint and the map for how that gets done. The In call prati abriya, excuse me. And this is, as our rabbis say, that the word reshis refers in a simple sense to the beginning of creation, of the heaven and earth, and all the details of creation. Mistaver lomar, there is to say, but prat al piyadu shishneim perushim beteva echad yesh b'neim shaychim shehedurash zeh eno shulalas es HaPerush, HaPashut B'Breshis, Elahi Bo the Haisef as Chadash Dekai Al Torah Yisrael Shinukar Reshis. So there's to say that specifically all that what is known, that there is these two explanations of one word. There is both of them that are relevant. So one explanation is Bereshis is for the Torah and the other is for the Yidden. And therefore we see that they're both connected one to the other. And this is, one is not negating from the other. Rather on, it's adding something unique to the other. The Fiza, the Rosh Biora, Bashaychos, Bain, HaPerush, Chazal, the Perush Pashut, Pashtus, Arjesh, Ne Perushim, Shoinim, Min HaKatzal, Katzal. And according to this, we can understand the connection between what is explained in the simple meaning and the two meanings that we said that are, we mentioned above. Is this variance of Bereshis. Because on one hand, we say it was made for the Torah and then for the Jewish people also. On one hand, we say it's the beginning of all creation and all heaven and earth and all the details. The Fiza, the Rosh Bior HaShaycha is Ben Perush Chazal, excuse me, the Perush Pashut, so we can explain the relevance between the simple meaning of Bereshis stands for creating heaven and earth and all the details of creation, and the deeper meaning that is given from our rabbis that the two beginnings are referring to the Torah and the Jewish people. Parshas are is the Fiha Rosh Bior HaShaychus Ben Poirus Hazal the Perush HaPshut. Parshas are is Yeshnei Perushim Shoinim Min Katzal Katzal. The Fiat the Roshas Hazal ain't Teres Bereshis Mitri Achatset the Brias Olam El the Torah of Yisrael. So it is true. Shekodem Bria ve'enam shel lo yibe'erech l'mayla habriya. So the word Reshis, right? This is the beginning of the creation of the world. And one opinion also saying it's also referring to the beginning, which is the Torah and the Jewish people. So before the creation, What is this thing that is above the creation? In other words, like if the whole purpose of the world is the world, then what is the explanation of something that is higher than creation? In other words, why does it matter? Now we have another question on the opening pasuk of Bereshit and the significant meaning of it, according to what Rashi says. So Rashi says, hold on. We know that the Mefarshim, the rabbis, teach us that God did create the world for the purpose of the Jewish people in the Torah. But if that's the case, Rashi has another question. This explanation in the beginning, the simple explanation where it says God created the heaven and the earth, and it was prior to that tohu and bohu. It was desolate and dark, and then God said, "Let there be light." And this is not to this the beginning of the Torah. In other words, if the purpose of the world, the Bereshit, the beginning is for the Yidden and for the Torah, then why doesn't the Torah start with? Rashi's probably going to say it. That I was going to probably explain it next, but the Rashi says, hold on a second. The first commandment given to the Jewish people before we got the Torah, when we, as a nation, not to Abraham Avinu, but as one Jew, as a nation, is when we left Egypt. He commanded us to count the months. You should have every single month. You should have a Rosh Chodesh. You should count the cycle, the moon, and count the months. That's where the Torah should have started. Why is it starting with the beginning of creation if the entire purpose is for the Torah and for the Yidden? That doesn't make sense. Then why did the recounting of creation start with God creating heaven and earth? שהם קדמם שלו בערך למעלה מהבריאה. אפילו אם רש"י צריך לבוא דרשה זה, אך על פנים לחקרים אז הפירוש פשוט. Okay. What's going on? So, even more than this, we see how the opening pasuk of the Torah is God created the heaven and earth. And this is, as I knew that the Rebbe is bringing it up next, so Rashi asks, why didn't God begin with the counting of the months? That was the first commandment given to the Jewish people. So if that's the case, it seems to be that from the way that God set up the creating, the recounting of creation, that perhaps it's not for the sake of the Jewish people and for the Torah, because if so, why did he begin the book of the Torah with the creation of the world? The creation of the world is secondary. The world's just a backdrop, right? I mean, what's more important, the players in the game, the ball, or the stadium where it takes place in, right? It's the world's the backdrop. Hold on, I lost my spots. Okay, Bisirim is this, and even more than this. But nobody already said that. So how can it be? Because even after the recounting of the creation of the world, Rashi still said, but the purpose of the world is the Torah and the Jewish people. So what's going on? Gimel. As a rabbi said, Bereshis, the beginning. that the ultimate intention and purpose was for the Torah, that God created the world, is for the Torah and is for the Yidden. And therefore, the Jewish people and the Torah are referred to as Reshis, or beginning. And there's not this according to completely of what we see that's concealed in creation. Hold on, there's a lot of brackets, and I'm trying to skip them because for bringing a little bit of reading the Sikha, and I want to at least attempt to finish in a timely manner. חלק מבריאה הם בראשיס בריאה בשביל נברא העולם, כפי שמובן מהלשון ראשיס גופה, משמע סוי של ראשיס היא כמו ראשיס תבואה סוי. שראשיס היא מתחילה יחד בדבר אחד עם כל התבואה. אחר כך ראשיס תבואה סוי. Okay, I'm going to continue on. ויבן לפי הביאור בתניא בלשון תפילה and you chose us. So now the Rebbe is going to, if I remember the Sikha correctly, start getting into some interesting explanations here. And it says, we say every day in our prayer, and you chose us from amongst all the nations, from amongst all the tongues. Ad Morazaki Muva Betanya, and the author Rebbe says in the Tanya, when God chose the Jewish people to be his chosen nation, it's a question that's asked often in Judaism and is very rarely answered properly, unless you're Lubavitcher and you learn Tanya. When God chose us to be his chosen nation, did he choose our bodies or our souls? And most people say our souls, and that's not true. God's souls are bodies. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but choice means choosing from things that are seemingly equal. He said he chose our bodies and said, I'm going to put an extra soul in these bodies. But the choice was between the bodies. And that's what it says, the physicality, the coarseness of our physical bodies is what God chose, which ultimately is why the body of a Jew is holier than our soul, and our body will enliven our soul when Moshiach comes. That he chose our physical bodies from amongst the other physical bodies of the nations of the world. And since that he chose, this choosing specifically is between two things that need to be equal. Otherwise, it's not a choice, right? So instead, you want $1 bill or $100 bill. That's not real choice. No one's going to take $1. Choice has to be between two things that apparently have equal value, an apple or an orange, something that has, they're different, but they have an equal value, if you will. There has to be just said, in between them are them. And if these two things are disproportionate in their value, right, then that's not considered free choice. True free choice, the Rebbe says, true choice, it's above Tam B'das, it's not logic, right? You can't logically convince someone why chocolate is better than vanilla. I think it is, but I can't convince someone who loves vanilla that it is, because for them, this isn't about, again, where someone said, oh, here's $1, here's 100. Everyone will tell you that this is obviously more valuable than 100. But when it comes to real choice, real free choice, which is, by the way, why it's so hard sometimes to make choices and to commit to things, because we have to be willing to give up something usually of equal value, right? Otherwise, it's not like, all right, do you want to work for 5 minutes and make $5,000? No, I'll just sit here and do nothing for 5 minutes. Like, well, That's not a choice. Yeah. Anyways, so true free choice means it has to be lemanda tamadas. This is free choice. Bechiras hafshit. Chayis v'hatam bo shetehe nitei asher machricha. Oisu l'machor v'ava devarze. Bechiras hamitis hi kasher ein bo shum tam v'shum natiyah. Free choice, really. There's no reason, like we just said. There's no logic. Ela bechira hi rak mishum shekach hu ratzah. Rather, this is what I'm choosing because this is what I desire, is what I want. I like chocolate, you like vanilla. There's nothing to talk about. And therefore, true free choice to choose the Jewish people amongst the nations had to come connected to the body. Otherwise, again, how do you, as a godly soul or a non-godly soul? That's not a free choice. נדמה בחומר יויסי לגופי אלמות העולם כאשר מדובר של נשמסי של יהודי. אין שייך למה ובנו בחרתה. We cannot say from the soul of a Jew, ובנו בחרתה, that you chose us. שהי נשמה יהודיס. חילוק אלוקים ומעל ממש. It's a part of God. That's not a free choice. You want a part of God inside you or not a part of God inside? That's not a free choice. You can't say it's the Jewish soul. There's nothing to compare those two things. Therefore, it couldn't be free choice to say it's the soul. And then we see that therefore there is a matters that it's much higher. If you see something that is much loftier, like we said, like a godly soul, that's not true free choice. It's specifically the physical body of the Jew that God chose. And it comes out from this below, between the nations that he chose their bodies. This is real free choice. And God will make us a segula, a cherished nation from amongst all the nations. And he chose us from amongst all the nations. And even more from this. And specifically the language that's used by the Alter Rebbe and the Tanya, that this the coarse physical body that God selected from amongst the bodies of the nations of the world. And the language used is not gashmi. It's not physical, but homri. Homri is Gashmi is physical. Homri is it's like coarse matter. I mean, it's a deeper. It's more coarse than physicality. I don't know how to explain it. It's like the clay for physicality. It's like the building essence of it. It's something that's even more in its root. Homri. It's something that Homer is like a. It's hard to touch into English properly, but it's yeah, okay. I did my best with that. Let's move on. And also that the physical body of a Jew is equal to the physical body of the nations of the world. We both need to drink, we have to sleep, we have to eat, right? This is a necessity. And therefore, the Rebbe says, even this idea of the physical body, it's not reflecting really what is the free choice. It's specifically the coarseness, the material of the building block, if you will, of the physical bodies that God chose. Because it's from a lower level, it's a coarser aspect of creation, if you will. This is where he's saying that this is a decision that's l'mayla tam v'das, meaning it's not logic. God just said, I'm going to take this building material and put a godly soul and make this the Jewish people. I'm going to take this building material and not. From this, we can understand that the Jewish people, they're at the beginning of creation. And this is not only connected to the soul, and the goof. So when it's starting and saying that the whole purpose of creation, Bereshis, was for the Torah and for the Yidden, it's not just referring to our soul, but the body, rather Rabbah, and even more so, the goof of Chormi, the coarseness of the body. Show you that God specifically chose our coarse bodies, if you will, from the coarseness of the bodies of the nations in the world. The Gufim yes, Ilui Legabi Hamaylish Yesh Liyodim Mitzar Atzmai. And we see that this is why it's so important, the physical body of a Jew, because it's revealing the choice of God. Our bodies need to be a living choice to show the world that this is a godly creation. This is what God put this the purpose of this in the world for, which is why it's so important that how we conduct ourselves amongst the nations of the world, right? There's different standards. If someone asks you to do one of the to bow down to an idol, if you're by yourself, if they ask you to that for everyone, bow down to an idol, that everyone has to choose death before that. But like if you're commanded to eat pork or something like that, and you're all by yourself, it's okay. But if you're in front of a huge group of Jewish people, and that could influence the mother to have doubts, then you're not allowed to. You have to die for it. In other words, the way we conduct ourselves amongst the world, amongst other Yidden, is so important, and it's looked at very heavily because we're walking around as with a symbol that God chose this body for a specific mission in the world. And if I'm fulfilling it, it reveals godliness. And God forbid I'm not, it shows hypocrisy. The Torah, we also see this as it's connected to the Torah. That the completion of the Torah specifically needs to be fulfilled down here in the physical world. Because the Torah was not given in heaven, that rather the Torah was specifically given in such a way that it is dependent upon the brain of the Yidden to interpret it. That's why we have rabbis. And the majority of the mitzvahs are meant to be conducted with physical objects, right? We just came out of Surface and Simplest Torah, and I usually buy very expensive esrogs because it's a mitzvah and it's supposed to be beautified. That's what God says to do. So it's like, well, it doesn't make sense to an average person why this giant looking lemon costs $400 or $500 and this one costs $50 or $75. It's there's a value, not just that in tefillin and mezuzahs and sefer Torahs, everything connected to Judaism. There's an inherent value in the physical item that you're using the mitzvah for, because the whole point of all of these mitzvahs, the majority of them, is to elevate physicality and to bring that godly energy down into this physical world. That's why the Torah was not given in heaven, but given down here. And when we find the Torah down here below, it reveals the true advantage of its nature. שגם כפי שהתורה נמצאת בעולם הסחורה, רואים כי טוב סחורה מכל סחורה. בשלימוס התורה אסור למטעים. מדובר על האל ונגד הגוף החומרי שהיהודי, and that's why we see the majority of the mitzvahs are forbidden to avoid. They can't put on tefillin. I want it doesn't matter. Because they're connected to the physical body of a yid. Al bizamuvan hachidush of perush azal al bereshis v'shel Torah shenikar reshis v'shel Yisrael shenikar reshis. According to this, we can understand what is explained that bereshis, the beginning, is for the sake of the Torah, which is the beginning, and for the sake of the Yidden, which is also the beginning. Ikra chidush v'zahi hu lo shad Rav Yisrael chinam reshis ve'etzem lamala legabi ma'abriya. El shegam fi shehem betoch abriya. And therefore we see that specifically for the Torah and the Yidden to fulfill our purposes is in this physical world. And that's why it's not a contradiction to start the Torah with the creation of the world, because the world isn't, in fact, the backdrop, if you will, and the stage, the central stage of our purpose in being here, and that's to transform the physical world into a home for God. I've said it 1,000 times, I'll say it 1,000 more. Judaism is not a religion. A religion is a dirty, stinking word that came up after the fact of to get a bunch of people together and follow certain beliefs and systems, often for not good purposes. Let's put it that way. Judaism is basically how to reveal God in a world that conceals him. It's not about us. It's not about building a future in heaven or any of that nonsense. It's about God. It's about God sent us down here, and He hid Himself from the world. And every time we keep Torah, do mitzvot, and daven, we bring godly energy into the world. And what's going to happen? It should happen immediately. Is Moshiach will reveal Himself, and the whole world will realize that everything is God. It always has been. Okay, and now we can start to understand these two examples of what it's talking about. These two, understandings or definitions of what Bereshis means from the Torah perspective. That both the Torah and the Jewish people are origins. Reshis are above creation, right? God actually first created the Jewish souls. It says that he consulted with the souls of the righteous. He took his energy out from him and multiplied it so he can have this mashpia makabel relationship, a give and receive relationship. And then he created the Torah, both of them preceding the world. Both above creation. At the same time, we are down here as part of the creation. Until our physical beings, which were chosen from amongst the nations. And through this level itself, through creation, we can reveal and recognize how there is a beginning. There is a creator. Someone put this together. Rashi as Perush, and therefore Rashi explains, Yisrael, for the sake of the Torah and for the sake of the Yidden, and it's not a contradiction to the existence of the world. On the contrary, not to the contrary, through the Jewish people's work in fulfilling God's will and His Torah down here below, we bring a completion to the world, shlemos. And this is the inner true purpose of why God created the world, and all the heavens and all the earth. In order to reveal the advantage of why He chose the Jewish people and the Torah. And we are chosen as the beginning, as it's in proportion to creation, because we were created before the world. And we also see this in the end of the completion of Parshas Bereshis, because the end is wedged in the beginning. But Noach matzah chen me'enei Hashem, and Noach found favor in God's eyes. And this word "hein" or favor, this is above logic or reasoning. And this is also showing this idea of choice. But all Noach שבגללו נוח מצא חן בעיני השם, הצליח הקדוש ברוך הוא המבול. עד שזה גם מביא למצב של אלה תורס נוח. נחיה לעליונים, נחיה לתחתונים. שהם בתחתונים נעשה נחיה. Okay. Just explaining this concept of it. We'll continue on with next week's parsha with Noah. That God actually chose Noah after the flood to begin and sustain what ultimately would become the other nations of the world. B'nai Noah, whose obligation is to fulfill the 7 laws of Noah. Okay. Hey. And from this we can understand the relevance, the explanation of Rashi on Parshas Bereshis. לא היה צריך להתחיל את התורה אלא מחודש כזה לכם. And then why did God not choose to begin the Torah with the first commandment given to the Yidden to count the months? ומתם פסק בראשיס משום כוח מעשה והגיל לעמוד לתת להם נחלה גויים, שאם יאמרו העולם ישראל סתים אייסם שכבשתם ארצי שבע גויים, הם אומרים להם כל הארץ של הקדוש ברוך הוא who bara b'natan l'shar yisha me'ena, v'retzei natal lehem, v'retzei natal lehem v'nistan lanu. How appropriate of what's going on in the world. And I don't even want to get started because I could rant on and on and on about the frustration and anger that I have for the so-called leaders in Israel, because they keep bringing this upon themselves, because they refuse to acknowledge that Israel is given to us by God, that there is no negotiating borders. There's no asking permission from America if we're allowed to build in our own country. There's no placating our enemies and giving them land, God forbid. This has to be secured all the way across the borders of Israel. And I don't want to get into it, but I can tell you this much. During the times of COVID, the government of Israel saw every single person. If you left your house, you got a notification on your phone. You must return home within 5 minutes or you're going to be arrested. They have the technology to track every license plate, every person across the whole country. There's been countless statements said from people who are sitting on the border of Gaza. These are army officials, intelligence officials who sat on those posts and said if a bird flew too close to the fence, they were alerted. There's air balloons. I've seen it with my own eyes with video cameras. That whole entire wall is under 24-hour surveillance. In 2 seconds flat, any one person could come across that wall and they're flat. And how did all of a sudden the majority of the soldiers that are supposed to watch the wall got sent to a different mission because they're worried about an attack possibly in another place? They abandoned their post. And that border was compromised to allow 400 tractors and heavy artillery to just go right through it, and no one stopped them? Yeah. Okay. Got some other stories to tell you. Anyways, the point is there's evil. There's evil in the depths of the hearts of some of those people that we trust and we believe are our leaders. And when you have hate for each other, you have hate for your brothers and sisters, guess what happens? That hate manifests itself outwards, comes back inside. So the point is, Rashi said at the beginning, why did God start the Torah with this recounting of Bereshis? Because he said, the nations of the world will stand up at one time and say, you stole the land of Israel, and point to the Jewish people. And we will point to the beginning of Bereshis and say, no. God created the world, and it's beyond the discussions of tonight's class. But there's discussions of the kings of Edom who ruled prior to the kings of the Jewish people ruling the land of Israel. That's referring to upper worlds and mixing of upper worlds and lower worlds, and it's a whole deep Kabbalistic explanation. But there is the land of Canaan, the seven lands of Canaan that have now become Eretz Israel. There's still remnants of that evil. And there was a point in time that there was evil that was allowed to so quote unquote rule. And God said, no. God said, I'm taking away and I'm giving it to the Jewish people. And now the Jewish people are going to govern my world according to how I want. And the nation's going to say, you stole it. We're going to say, no, he didn't. It's God's land. He may have temporarily given it to you, but now he gave it to us. And they're literally starting a war against God. And unfortunately, some of our biggest enemies are on our side of the border. If you don't think that Amalek has not entered into the government of Israel, into the government of America, into the ruling governments across the world, then you have no freaking clue what's going on in the world. But that's for another discussion. Yeah. And Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide. And a plane caused the World Trade Towers to implode, like 2 tons of explosives. Yeah. Lots of stories if you want to believe them. Anyways, don't get me started because I'm just going to get frustrated. The point of the matter is that Rashi said that the nations of the world will call us thieves, and we are showing God created this world. God gives it to who he wants to. And while he let you temporarily use it for destruction, he has now taken it back and given it to us. And if anyone thinks for a moment that these people are going to get away with this and there's not going to be a reckoning and that there's not going to be a judgment, no, it's coming, because Moshiach is about to reveal himself to the world. And, well, we're going to see what happens to all those who are doing these things to harm God's children. Anyways, let me continue because I'm just going to get more and more frustrated. Hey, we already started that. So Rashi's basically saying that's why God began with this pasuk. Now I lost my place because I got all fired up here. Where did I go? Oh. Where did this just go? Distracted myself. Okay. And the unique thing about this is Lo Shatorav Yisrael Hinam Namaram Ha'olam Ela Filo Kofi Yisrael Nimzaim Ba'olamot Holazah Gashmi Achayri Achadim Ha'olam. That the Yidden and the Torah and the Yidden, even though our sources from preceding the world, we're down here in this world. And we find ourselves in a physical world amongst the nations of the world. Yesh Malkoyim Lata'ana, the Sitim, Atem, Shubakashtim, Artsay, Shuba'am, the Chodas Nisala, Goyim, Kodesh Baho, Beretzoin, the Haleh, Shem Nizgala, Oyser, Machal Rasar, the Kohami, and it says that God chose us, and he chose the land of Israel to be our home, irrespective of what he may have allowed to exist before. L'koach masa hagida amo l'teis lehem nisgala nechalas goyim kashem shekodesh bohu b'chor Yisrael kahu gam b'chor b'retzoyin natala mehem v'nat lanu. It says as ha'aretz Yisrael ha'aretz nitlecha le'amo l'havar l'haisa b'zeh nital lanu es Yisrael ha'gashmis. This is the land that he gave to the Jewish people, the physical land. Yeah, I mean, let me just continue. Because I was in Israel during the expulsion of Gush Katif, when these freaking morons, I don't call them morons because it's intentional, they gave our land. They threw Jewish people, innocent women and kids, beat them like dogs with horses that were trained in overseas in Germany, and they brought them, horrible, to their own brothers and sisters to give the land to Arabs so they can have peace. They burnt down every factory. They wiped out every farm. They set up rocket launching attacks from day one. Every single commander in the political arena who was involved in that, you don't know the atrocities that happened. And I'm talking about on our side. Anyways, this is the problem. The problem is that there's this hatred in the hearts of some Jews or Erev Rav, whoever you want to call, that so badly want the Goyim to love them that they're willing to kill and sacrifice their own brothers and sisters for power, for sickness. And that evil has to be eradicated from our hearts, not just from the outside world, but from our hearts. Hamas said, we took advantage of the fact that there was so much protesting and so much hatred between the Jewish people. It's a known thing. Anyways, don't get me started. So God chose us, and He put us amongst the nations of the world, and basically He said they're gonna call us thieves at one point in time, and that's exactly what's happened. And instead of standing strong, the Rebbe said so many times, stop placating, stop kowtowing to the nations. Stand up and proudly and say the land of Israel was given to the Jewish people by God, and no one has any business even discussing giving away one piece of dirt from inside the land of Israel. But they don't do it. Blue lines, green lines, this one, that one, it's for peace, it's for that. It's all BS. They know, believe me, they know. A muluk in the brain, in the heart. Okay. And we also see through the continuation of the upcoming parshas. The Acher, Parshas Bereshis, and Parshas Noach, we reach Parshas Lech Lecha. Sheva Musbar, Echa Kodesh Baruch Amar LaAvram, Lech Lecha. When God said to Abraham, go. Lech Lecha, go to you. Va'artzekom l'odechem l'beis avich. From your land, from your birthplace, and from your father's house, to the land that I will show you. And we found that Abraham found himself in the coarseness and physicality of the world, amongst the nations of the world. Artzecha, your land, Mododecha, your birthplace, Beis Avicha, and your father's house. Let's ace Mishan Mitchalet, at least not take. Kadosh Baruch Hu is saying, "Lo achacha es Eretz Israel." Said, to the land I will show you. And afterwards Hashem brought him to the land of Israel and said, this is your land. I'm giving it to you as inheritance. For you and for your children, forever. What does it mean also in the inner dimension? It will reveal your true essence, this place. This was the beginning of ultimately what would become the Jewish people and our homeland. Vav. Al pizeh no muvan. Gam he'ilui shel Shabbos Bereshis. And according to this, we could also now understand the tremendous advantage of this Shabbos. Asher kavshim mitzivim v'zeh kach zeh nimshach. Yesh lomar shishtei ma'alos hanal b'bnei Yisrael l'mayla ma'olam. U'malasam ba'olam. Hari b'zmani v'shana harizah boli day. Between the Havdal ben Chodesh Tishrei l'Shar Chodesh Hashanah. So there is to say that these two advantages we said above, and that the beginnings of the Jewish people and the Torah that came before the world, and the advantages that we see this as a connection also to the specific time of the year we're in, and how there's a separation between the month of Tishrei and the upcoming months for the rest of the year. Chodesh Tishrei, Ameruba Ma'oidos, Bodidei B'Toi Giloyech, Yehudim Nimtzayim L'Mayla Manhag Elohim. The whole entire month of Tishrei is clear evidence how the Jewish people are above the normal conducts of the world. I went with my family to Mifsoim throughout the holiday. And we went and visited my aunt in Manhattan, and we went to the Statue of Liberty, and I brought my Lulav and Esrog, and they kept trying to take it away from me. Like 5 different security officers. And I said, no, I'm sorry, this is a religious article and I need the character in the holiday. It's a palm branch. So what are they going to do? They let me through all the security checkpoints. And I was just walking around, and everyone was like walking like staring. The Rebbe says that the Goyim will look at the lulav and the esrog in the hand of a Jew and see that it's a victory sword, that we won, that we're victorious over the forces of darkness. It doesn't seem that way right now, but don't worry, we will be. And then we'll cause awe, we'll cause fear. And that's the whole month of Tishrei. The whole month of Tishrei, we see how the Jews conduct themselves above the world. Everything we're doing is not logic. It doesn't make sense. It's clearly coming from God. Especially during the time of Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah. And we see that the tremendous joy that the Jewish people have from dancing with the Torah. That's above any logic. We have to bring this power and energy through the entire world. And God forbid if we become depressed and they win. We have to keep the simcha. It's the hardest thing to do. It's the hardest thing to do in the world. I remember I was going through a very, very hard, dark time in my life. About 6 to 8 years ago, I had a period of, I wish I could say it was short. It was years, so much pressure and challenges in my home. My wife and I fighting like crazy. My office was imploding. The center wasn't doing good. There was no money. I was like, I almost had to declare bankruptcy. It was a very, very, very hard time in my life. And I was so frustrated. I didn't know what to do, and I was trying to figure things out. And I sat with my rabbi in Eretz Israel, and I had this like 10-page letter I put together asking this and I'll never forget. Rav Gafni should live and be well. He said, right now there's only 2 things for you to do: simcha and bitachon. And I know it's hard when the pressure's on, but that's what you need. And I understood it in my brain, but I was still, my nature is to fix things. So if things seem like they're broken, I just want to right away search for solutions. And I was so solution oriented for so long, but I couldn't do it. Whatever I did, it just wasn't working. And it helped me let go a little bit. Not that we shouldn't try to find solutions to problems, but these are the 2 most important things we have to have right now: simcha and bitachon. Simcha means joy for no reason. Not because you won the lottery or this happened good in your life or that happened. Just pure joy for no other reason. And bitachon is pure trust in God. Trust in God that all of this somehow will be revealed for good and that there will be justice. And that's the idea, my friends. Okay. Keep losing my place. And so the way that the Goyim see we conduct ourselves during this month of Tishrei, it's obvious that we're living above the nature. That this group of people is not living according to the channels of nature fuel. B'Shabbos Bereshis, Ishnam Sheninim, and Shabbos Bereshis encompasses both of these matters. Ma'il Shel Torah Yisrael Kafi Shehem Reshis, the advantage of the Torah and the Jewish people that are the beginnings, Be'etzem Kafi Shehem Reshis Shel Olam, that they were created before the world. V'lochim Makablim Oz Es HaKoach Asher Oy Taram Sheotziim V'Chodesh Tishrei La'asais Ez HaVorah Ba'olam. And therefore, this particular month gives us a special power for the entire upcoming year, and especially the Shabbos. And every one of our all the good things we did specifically in our lives every day, especially in fulfilling the Torah. And again, the entire point of creation is for the Torah and for the Jewish people, because we preceded creation. And this gives a specific power in this Shabbos to draw down through the entire year. שגם בתוך העבודה בעובדים דרכו הגשמיאליס והחיים ישראלים, and specifically how we bring this godly energy down into this physical world. תרגיש למעלה של בני ישראל, כעם נבחר את הרווחה דרכם, that the nations of the world should see and acknowledge, and we should see and acknowledge, that God shows us, He chose our bodies to perform His will in this physical world. Zion. It's we will, God willing, finish on time because we've been running for a while, and but there's only 10 letters. It's not short single, but it's not overwhelming long. Okay. Al pi anal shalamaylas b'nei Yisrael ka'am הנבחר בו לידי ביטוי בגילוי כפי שהם נמצאים בעולם הגשמי החיים. יש בזה נפקא מינה בפועל שהיא עיקר ויסוד באופן איך צריך יהודי לעשות את העבודות בזמן הגלות. And the specific work that is incumbent upon ourselves is specifically in the time of the galus. It's interesting. Someone was quoting a mimer they learned from the Alter Rebbe in Torah Or, where he said that the practice of dancing with the Torah in simplest Torah is a galus practice. That this was not done in the base of Mikdash. I didn't know that. That it's specifically in the time of the galus that this was instituted. And the idea, that's what the Rebbe is saying, that is the time that our work is the most important. Because when God is open and revealed, well, it's not, doesn't really take too much to serve Him. But now that He's concealed, this is the real work. This is the real work. כיוון שכל העולם נברא בשביל ישראל, זה בא לידי ביטוי גם בעולם הזה גשמי החומרי, וזהו ברבחתו בגוף החומרי של יהודי, נדמה בחומר ישראל לגוף המתועל, המובן שבכל מעמוד המצב, בכל זמן ובכל מקום, במצב חומרי ויוס. אפילו בזמן הגלות נמצאים בני ישראל בדרגת רשעים. That even in the time of exile, we still have to say that God chose us from amongst the nations. And our specific work is during the time of the exile. The Ma'al Mekadonim, from above all other matters, rather Rabbi Shvilim Yivra Hakol. V'yosam ba'am u'nivchar b'hem b'char HaKadosh Baruch, that we are chosen. Now move on to Afilo Kasher Yehudim Nimsa B'Galus Tachas HaOved Ma'al Machyoy. Excuse me. We can understand even when the Jewish people find ourselves in this time of the Galus under the service of foreign kings, meaning that we still don't have a Jewish king fully ruling over us. Those who have appointed Melech Moshiach do, but those who do not still. Anyhow, in this time of the Galus, for the most part, the Yidden are still under foreign rule. Oh boy, I lost my place again. Fudge, I lost my spot. Oh, here it is. מפני התאינו גלינו מארצנו, הנה הגם שאין רואים בגילוי איך שנשמה היא בדרגת רשיס, אבל בגוף הגשמי יכולים לשאול יהודים מסברית בדרגת רשיס. בגלל בחירה של הקדוש ברוך הוא בגוף. And we see that specifically that God again chose the body. ולכן מובן שלא זה בלבד, שאין היהודים and even if it appears that we are under the rulership of the Goyim, God forbid, it's not true. Ella, the Rabbah, on the contrary, Hein Rish is called Bria. We're the entire purpose of all creation. God, literally, the entire world is God's creation. We're part of the Creator from a higher source. And it says, in the end of times, right before Moshiach comes, the Jewish people will realize that the only thing they can rely on is our Father in heaven. Not our armies, Not our wars, not our money, not our governments, not our jobs, not our bank account, none of that. Only God. And therefore, the Rebbe says, even though it appears that we're under the rulership of the nations of the world, it's not the case at all. Because we are only here because God sent us here. And we're still the whole point of creation. It's an illusion. And because we find ourselves specifically under foreign rule, under the rule of the nations where we live, and the fact that God has commanded us to obey the laws of the countries that we live in, right? And the Rebbe said the reason that we conduct ourselves according to a law abiding, fashionable way is not because, God forbid, we have fear from the goyim and the goyish governments. It's because God commanded us to do so. Chas v'shalom, the Rebbe says on the contrary. We are the beginning. We're the whole point of creation. How could it be that any nation has any rulership over us? God put us in this world below, and he said, here's how you must conduct yourself. And that's why we do it. Not because we're afraid that Goyim's going to do something to us. And this is the problem with the government in Israel. They live under constant fear of public opinion. And our enemies take advantage of it every time. There's mass confusion in Israel right now. The government, where are the reports of what the Israeli government's doing? There are none. We spoke to family members and friends in Israel. They're like private people are going to individual homes and bringing them food, bringing them guns, because no one knows what's going on. It's complete chaos. Because these monsters, Hamas, Arabs, whatever you want to call them, they're hiding innocent civilians. So Israel doesn't even know where to strike. They're so afraid they're gonna hit a civilian, a woman, a child. It's complete confusion right now. Complete confusion. Because they're so concerned what the nations will say. Do you ever see Vietnam? How about World War II? America flattened those places. They went in carpetbag. They mowed down how many hundreds of thousands of women and children. It's war. But none of this would even have to happen if the Jewish people stood strong and said, we're not afraid of the Goyim. We're not afraid of what America's going to say. We don't need your foreign aid. We're not afraid of what the nations are going to point their finger and yell at you. If you stand up and say, Kushman Tuchas, God gave me this land. This land belongs to our people. Go worry about the other 99.9% of the world. What do you care? You care about all the barbaric animals in all these Arab countries that are murdering their women and children and beating them every single day? Doesn't bother you, does it? Now all of a sudden you're righteous and you're a protector of the world. Please, it's such hypocrisy. But the Jewish people need to stand strong. And we do, they will instantly, in 2 seconds, respect us. But when they're chased after respect and kavod and hey, take this, just be our friends, and we're sorry. So how many times we're in war and we have our enemies like this, and they say ceasefire, we say okay, ceasefire. The Rebbe is screaming at them, finish the job, it's over. What can I tell you? It's such a shkacha protest that we're learning, and this is happening right now with the Rebbe saying chas v'shalom, that we're afraid of the goyim, what they're going to say, what they're going to do. We're here because God chose us to come down here. He chose us to exist before He even created the world. We're not afraid. We're not afraid of the goyim. They're here for a purpose. We don't follow their orders because we're afraid of it. We're not worried about it. God gave this land to us as an inheritance. God set up the world in a particular way. And God gave the land of Eretz Israel to the Jewish people as an eternal heritage. I'm giving this land to you. Es Artsais Ammon Umoab, V'lo Bnei Yisrael. And the other land he gave to the Goyim. This little sliver of land that represents 100th, maybe 1,000th of the place in the entire world. Everyone's so concerned that we have this piece of land. V'lochein es tizgara af machab. V'al dragzeh b'nogel le'al tizgara v'amot v'dina b'machus dina. Har'ein ze b'gala pechat. Chas v'shalom. We follow the laws of the host countries we live in, not because we're afraid. The Rebbe says, Chas v'shalom. El mishum shekach kavah kodesh b'choy v'tziyah shechas v'hilos. Seder b'zman agos. Because God, we follow these laws of the countries we're in because God put us there. He placed each one of us in the particular lands in the time of the exile. So we should be a shining light to the nations, that they should see what it is, how Hashem wants us to conduct the world. It's a good thing I lost my voice from so much drinking and dancing and singing over the last week and a half, because I'd be screaming right now, but I don't have much of a voice. Yisrael, Hemam Nivcha, Reish Yisrael, Oidam Vakal Motor. Zoit Amer Noiser Lazar Dina Bamachus Dina, Hasram Rak Managa Nirma Gash Mitzvayim. The Rebbe is reminding us again, we're only following the laws of the country we're in because God put us here, not because we're afraid, God forbid. Because God's running the world, but no going to Torah mitzvahs. So the Ham Geshma Rabba Torah, Torah. We conduct ourselves according to the Torah mitzvah. That's why we're here. This applies also to our physical bodies that God created in the beginning that are above from the creation. And again, the Rebbe is emphasizing we follow out the laws of the country we're in, not because we are afraid or because we're below and are serving the ruling bodies of those nations. But because God put us here according to the way of the exile. This is why we're here, for a purpose. Okay. כאשר לכן צריך על יהודים להם שדרוש שלום העיר, כי שלום היה לכם שלום. אין זה בגלל שיהודים זקוקים לחסידיהם חס ושלום, אדרבה חסד לאומות התארץ. From this we can understand also that the kindness of the Jewish people that we received through the kindness of the nations at the time of the exile, and that it's necessary that we in order to have shalom, in order to have peace, you have to have completion. And therefore, the Jew, we are not, God forbid, afraid. Rather, we're giving kindness to the nations of the world, not because we're trying to placate them or be nice or because we're afraid of them. Rather, because it's a basic fundament of the Torah, that we're meant to be kind to the nations of the world. And this is through the kindness of God Himself. And not, God forbid, because we're afraid or we're trying to appease them for something. Okay, Ches, Lahaisif, and furthermore, She'inyan has now b'Shabbos Bereshis Mudgash b'Yoser She'es b'Gilui Hashana Zu Tavshanun Beis. This all is especially applicable to this year Tavshanun Beis. Asher Yehudim Metziinim Zoid Ucharasa Ayatach Hashana Niflois. This is the year I will show you wonders in all things. Niflot, referring to Nun Pelot, the two nuns, these wonders this year of Nun Beis, when the Rebbe gave these sichos. Originally is many times he referred to a year that will show you wonders in everything, and there were many miracles that year. The year that I will show you wonder. Shana Areno Niflois, Bashana Avoda Adai Fawaz Bashana Zonila Malia Bekadusha, Noise Bashana Zoshishnati Niflois, but Niflois Lo Shana Niflo Hanim. That there'll be wonders, miracles in all things. And there were two wonders in everything. This and how God chose the Jewish people. Shana Zu, Hamshak Niflois Bashana Avora. And the Rebbe said, as we see as a continuation of this past year and the beginning of this upcoming year, already the miracles and wonders God is showing us. In that year in the base when he gave the Sikh in 1992, Medina, he Mish Hariras, and we see on the Alfi Alafi Yehudim, the Alois Leretz Israel. We see how that Russia, at one point in time, which did not allow the Jewish people to leave, the Iron Curtain refused anyone to leave. And now that their government is actually assisting countless Jewish people to come to Eretz Israel, and that we see how the assistance of the nations of the world and their encouragement for the Jewish people, and particularly in the land of Israel, is increasing even more generation by generation. Because we're getting closer and closer to the true and complete redemption. In other words, I think that I was saying, I don't think it's necessarily out of their own kindness, but out of the realization that it's Judgment Day, that it's coming, and yeah. כאשר יקרא מהליך גויים לאורך, אם מלאכים ומונחה ושורשיך מכנסם, וכאן לזה הרי משך את דורס, גם בזמן הגלוס, רואים שאפילו מתלזה מכריעים, כך שיהודים הם הנבחר, כנברא כמה כאן, the Rebbe is saying more and more we're seeing how the nations of the world are becoming more helpers and more supporters of the Jewish people, etc. And these are all signs of their redemption. And we see this even more so in the most recent years. And especially in the land we live in America, which is a nation of kindness. And that they assist the Jewish people in their service in a way of menucha nefesh and menucha guf, and a calm soul and a calm body. It's for the most part that is true, and there's it's been a long time since there's been a host nation who has allowed the Jewish people to openly practice their religion and support them in that. And furthermore, we see the assistance of the Jews in Israel. Let's see what happens now. And what the Rebbe is mentioning again, we see the assistance of America towards the Jewish people as it's increasing again. We saw it last year, we see it this year. And we see also the work of our Rebbes and our leaders. More and more they were involved with governments and how throughout the years the government has become more supportive of our people, of religion. Some may be God's will. And the Rebbe said, and more right now, the most important thing is we have to add on more and more goodness, more and more light. Until it will nullify any boundaries or limitations, and that the spreading of the kindness of the Jewish people should spread out to the Jewish people around Eretz Israel and across the whole world. Even now, as we find ourselves here in this land in America. Koch Masel Hagil Amon the Taste Lahan Chalas Goyim Shim Rabru Oimus Oilam Yisrael Team Oisam Sham Sheva. Okay, well, it's the same pasuk from Rashi. I'm not going to go repeat it again. Test. All right, we're winding down now. Two more letters. We'll call Hanon move on. From everything we said above, we could understand. Move on, but pashtus. Ad Kalam Mishulalas, but Takdis Hachrizas. A persama that we must continue to spread the message. Shehudim be'Eretz Yisrael tzrichim lachana l'lachetz es she'omat homet kasha l'Eretz Yisrael v'gelam. All his gara ba'amot hayoyim haim nimtzim tachas hashvita shel mut ha'olam v'tuluyim b'chasidihem. Hayois Makach. Hatzlacha Vikim Yehudim Be'eretz Yisrael. Tilui B'umat Ha'olam Rachmani Litzlan Hoy Litzia. So appropriate that we're reading and learning this right now. The Rebbe says that we must spread out. One second, let me see. And the fact that the Jewish people find ourselves amongst the nations of the world is not dependent on the fact that because of their kindness or because we're trying to be kind to them or we're worried about them, God forbid. On the contrary, we find ourselves that nothing sustains the Jewish people in the land of Israel, that we're not dependent on the nations of the world, Rahmani Litzlan, to think for a second that we have to, the government in Israel he's specifically talking to has to placate or do things to make the nations of the world happy as an excuse why we're comfortable in our own land. It has nothing to do with them. First of all, Rahmani Litzlan, the Omar Shakim, the Yehudi, he, this B'Pesach Rahmani Litzlan, Hoyletzia. Am Yisrael Hu Nitzchi Chayus V'Hem Hashem V'Karach Hina Nitzchi. That the Jewish people, God forbid, to think that we can ever be destroyed. It'll never happen. We're an eternal people with an eternal God, and we're eternally will exist and be an eternal victory. And secondly, every single Jew needs to know in the simplest sense that the entire Torah, Bereshis, as explained, that the entire Torah, the entire world was created for the sake of the Torah and for the sake of the Yidden. And from this we can understand also in a simple way, mamash, that there's the nations of the world are not running the world. God forbid, Rahmani Litzlan, that the Jewish people are not under the rulership of the nations of the world. We are created by God, we got sent here by God, and God is the only one who can rule over us. God above and Melech HaMashiach below. And we have to increase in studying Torah. You don't know the importance of learning Torah. You're flushing out your yeshus. You're removing your sense of self. You're bringing godly energy into you. There's nothing more purifying for the soul than Torah, especially Chassidus. And this is a foundation of the entire Torah. That the entire world was created for the Torah and for the Yidden. We must learn, increase in the Torah learning. The more is Zeh, Na'amad, Yehudi, the Chriza, Fear the Fnei Kama Vakama series in Israel, Asher, Baal, Shmoa, Torah, Shekim Ash Yisrael, Tevui, Omotola. That the thing that has only kept us among all this time is from keeping Torah. It's the only thing that has kept us and protected us is keeping Torah. Bila v'davar chazach Yosef b'bono atam hayamim tovim shechodesh Tishrei kasher Yehudim amru kama pamim tfilos ata v'chatanu b'kol amim, as we have said many times throughout this festive holiday season, over and over again. And you chose us, God, from all the nations. V'ad karikach hadavar b'pashtu sha'af echad lo chalam sheyesh tzurich lahadchir zayit b'prat Yehudim. Says even the Goyim can acknowledge and recognize that the Jewish people are the chosen people. And we see this in a simple sense throughout the continuation of the generations. And Gimel, the Tan shall is Gara Ba'amot. Hasidim Shabakalim Mutamadam Ein La Kal Shaykhus Lazet. Kumuvan Bapashu Sha'al his Gara Ba'amot. Ein Zen Naga Chas V'Shalei Mekal V'Kal Bereshis V'Shvei Yisra Ata V'Chatar Megamar La'ah. And again, don't think that the reason that we're kind to our host nations is because we're afraid of them. God forbid. We fear nothing but God. God created us for the whole entire point of creation. Don't for a minute try to placate the goyim and bow and make them feel that somehow they're in charge of you. And mainly and namely, understand this in a simple way. We must increase in all matters of keeping Torah and mitzvot. He's God. All pikoach nafshos. Psak adin b'shulchan aruch oisam chaim siman rakach. Yivrim shana the Yirad Yisrael moim al avskim nafshos. Feel a dying loba elam mishim levar Yitzhak lehem akal zay unbelievable. Zam echilan lehem al hashabat. The Rambam says it. The land of Israel must be defended no matter what. Even if there's even a talk or one word about them coming to attack the land of Israel, even on Shabbat we must go out and fight and defend the land of Israel. So tell me, why did the government know for over 2 weeks, some inside intelligent officials, that this attack was going to happen? I'm talking about the Israeli government. 10 days ago, Egypt intelligence warned Israel a big attack is coming. They knew Iran was on the border. They knew everything was attacked. Why did they do it? Yud, Yiratzon, may it be God's will. Shechoy Israel b'divra, afil dora davar hamelech hamar, shegias mina yavi. V'oid be'ikr, asher b'klal lo yitztarechoy l'davar b'shlo yila inim kilo, v'chan lahavi yidavaru rak b'smech v'shavchem u'melasam shokal echad Yisrael. We have to continue to add in joy and increase in our activities. As yid michal al yidei shehem masifim v'leimer Torah, and specifically through adding on in our learning of Torah and adding on fulfilling in mitzvahs. Call michal generally and specifically. Yisrei Talmud Yisrei Chitas, my saying Chitas, which is Chumash and Tehillim and Tanya. The Od with the Ikar, mainly and namely. Shetoisef v'chras kol ha'olim kolal mut ha'olim v'madasav shebechem shel Yisrael. And we must announce to the entire world that the advantage of a Jew is the fact that God created us and created the world for our purpose of bringing godly energy to the world. She'eretz Yisrael shaychim la'am ha'Yisrael. And the land of Israel specifically belongs to the Jewish people and is here for our purpose of bringing mitzvahs and Torah to the world. And this completion will be in the Gol Mitzvah Shlema, the true and complete redemption. And not only the 7 lands that we already have, but the 3 final lands will be conquered as well. And it should happen immediately. And we should have the ultimate wonder from Hashem. And like when you took out of Egypt, I will show you wonders. By the true and complete redemption from a righteous Moshiach. Told us Noach. We're coming up to precious Noach, and then Lechtecha. When God commands Abraham to go out from his land and his birthplace and his father's house to the land I will show you. Shekal b'nei Israel, and this is appropriate for every single Jew. Klal ela nimtzeim, no matter where we may find ourselves. Haluchim eretz hakodesh, and together we will travel to the Holy Land. Yerushalayim HaKodesh to the holy city of Jerusalem. Har HaKodesh to the holy mountain. But Beis Hamikdash Shlish to the third temple. Mikdash HaKodesh Kodeshim, the holy of holies. And it should happen techach be'ad mamish. Yechi al neinu marinu v'Rabbeinu Melech HaMashiach Lamud. Yechi al neinu marinu v'Rabbeinu Melech HaMashiach Lamud. Yechi al neinu marinu v'Rabbeinu Melech HaMashiach Lamud. Hashem should avenge our blood and 1,000 times should fall on our enemies, whether they're part of the covenant or against the covenants and outside of the covenant. And most importantly, show the fullest galus of Melech HaMashiach right now. Yechi al neinu marinu v'Rabbeinu Melech HaMashiach Lamud. God bless you.